Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. I have a check-in system and turn into God on Earth. Chapter 81. Tony was speechless for a moment. He knew that if Lulin said such a thing, it would prove that he had no intention of telling the truth to himself. After getting along with Lulin for so long, Tony had long figured out Lulin's temper. Since Lulin didn't want to say it, then he simply didn't bother to ask. Unless Lulin wanted to, he would never have asked, which Tony was still self-aware. Wait, we have old friends coming. Lulin glanced at the sky. Go out with me to meet them. Old friend. Tony glanced thoughtfully at the sky, and then flew into space with Lulin. In space, Xingju saw the two people floating in front of him and was immediately startled. But after seeing who the two of them were, Xingju immediately waved his hand excitedly. Soon, the ship opened and Tony and Lurin walked in. After entering, Lulin was surprised to find that there were several extremely familiar faces on this spaceship. Green Gamora, Red Drax, and a baby raccoon and a big tree man who will only say I'm Groot. What's the situation, you guys are? Lulin glanced at Star-Lord curiously. He was curious about how these people got together without the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Hey, remember the bounty hunter squad I told you earlier? Xingju said excitedly. These are my team members. No, you're my team. Rocket Raccoon said dissatisfied. I am the captain, I am the captain. No, I'm the captain. Xingju immediately said righteously. Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Lulin hurriedly stepped forward to stop it. Why don't you introduce us to each other first? After some introduction, everyone can be regarded as getting to know each other. So, why don't you honestly go and be your bounty hunter and run to Earth? Is it homesickness? Not really. Xingju smiled and said the reason. Probably out of revenge or something else. In short, Shandar Star publicized all the events of that day. Now everyone in the universe knows that the power gem is in Lulin's hands. It's just that the rumors spread and it changed taste, and everyone began to think that the person who defeated the Kree Empire was Star-Lord. Hearing this, Lulin understood what was going on. Where the rumors have changed their taste, it must be that this guy Xingju is bragging in front of everyone, and there is no door on his mouth, which makes the rumors change their taste. When he said this, Xingju was also weak for a while, and then these things were taken by him. However, this time Star-Lord came because he had inquired about the whereabouts of another Infinity Stone. Someone was willing to pay a lot of money to hire Star-Lord to get the gem back. Although he didn't know which Infinity Stone that gem was, Star-Lord could be sure that this gem must be real. But with the strength of these people, there was definitely no way to get the Infinity Stone, so Star-Lord thought of Lulin and Tony on Earth. How? Interested in taking a vote? Xingju rubbed his hands excitedly and said, if you are interested in that gem, then after I find the gem, I only need a small commission. If you're not interested in a gemstone, how about we sell it for a 50-50%? Lulin glanced at Tony. How? Think about it. No. Each Infinity Stone is very powerful, and the arm has that power gem to solve your problem. Tony was also clearly impressed by Lulin's proposal. Although now that Lulin is here, he doesn't have to worry about death at all, but it is not a way to keep going like this. So he decided to go with Lulin to find another legendary Infinity Stone. As for what should be done after the matter is completed, several people did not mention this topic very tacitly. The gem has not yet been found, and it is a little too early to mention what to divide. On the way to find the Infinity Stones, several people also took the initiative to do several bounty tasks. These tasks were easy for Xingju and the others, and naturally there was no time delay. Soon, in the midst of the battle, the group became familiar. And Tony gradually became interested in these companions of Star-Lord. Especially the Rocket Raccoon, Groot, and Drax are very interesting. Rocket Raccoon is a product of genetic technology, but the mechanical technology in him is also very interesting. Of course, after learning about the sore spot of the Rocket Raccoon, Tony will definitely not make an offensive move. Hurting each other with other people's wounds, that is no longer a matter of poisonous tongue or not poisonous tongue, this is pure character problem. If it had been Tony before, he might have done something like this. But now, Tony is not the same person he used to be, and he definitely can't do this kind of thing. And the two people of Gamora, Drax, in terms of appearance alone, except for the color of their skin, are no different from normal humans, but they have thrown the Earthlings a few streets in terms of combat effectiveness. As we all know, many mechanical designs are inspired by the form of living things. What kind of mechanical design can make the output most efficient? What kind of design can save more energy? These are all things that need to be studied. Tony was therefore interested in the muscular makeup of the Gamora. Drax's power comes from the battle marks on his body, and Tony feels that these tattoo-like war marks should be something similar to electronic circuits. Therefore, he was curious to see if these things could be applied to the armor. If these battle emblems can be applied to his battle armor, I believe it will definitely bring him a great improvement. This may even be the door he opens to magical research. But if not, then why? Tony felt it was a subject that needed to be seriously studied. Before that, Tony first had to get along with these people. Tony believes that if he says that he wants to study the physiology of Gamora and Drax, he will only end up unhappy. Especially when Tony learned that Drax was the last survivor of their civilization and that the battle emblem was completely out of print, he was even more careful. After all, it is something that has almost been lost, and the other party will definitely offer a high price. If you don't have a good relationship, the other person may not even talk to you about these things at all. So Tony was very careful. But after a few days together, Tony also began to like the small team. Because Tony could see that they were really the kind of people who would rush to protect their friends if they were in danger. Although I don't know what they have experienced before, this bond between them will not be deceptive. There may be people who don't admit it, but when friends are in danger, they will definitely stand up without hesitation. That's for sure, and this kind of feeling is exactly what Tony wants to have the most. He was only surrounded by Pepper and Harpy, oh yes, and Obadi, but Obadi had already betrayed him, so there was no need to mention it. You know, Star-Lord, there is a very famous man on Earth, his name is Douglas Adams, and he said a 3 law of technology, which is very interesting. The so-called 3 laws of science and technology are naturally divided into 3. First, everything that was invented before I was born is taken for granted. Second, everything I invented between the ages of 15 to 35 was destined to change the world. Third, all inventions after I turned 35 are anti-human. According to the 3 laws of science and technology, the extended content is also applicable in the field of culture. You can directly say that I am an old antique who does not understand culture, there is no need to scold me so obliquely. Xingju rolled his eyes. Since you don't like it, then I'll put on the headphones. Seeing this scene, everyone immediately burst into laughter. Xingju's helpless expression was really funny. And everyone's taste for Star-Lord is indeed quite critical, except for Gamora. At this moment, a streamer flashed outside the spacecraft. A gentle old man appeared in front of everyone. I guess you're my child. Everyone looked at each other, and finally turned their eyes to Yilulin. What? Lu Lin's face was full of question marks. You mean, me? Of course. Iago smiled kindly. Who else has such great power besides you? Lu Lin rolled his eyes. I am the Prince of Asgard, not your child. Asgard. Iago was stunned for a moment. Naturally, he also knew the existence of Asgard, and also knew what Asgard concept was. But the problem is, Lurin says he is the Prince of Asgard. This made Iago not very willing to believe it. Lu Lin pointed at Xingju. He is your son. Iago hesitated, then smiled gently. How could this Earthling be my child? He's really a little too. Iago shook his head. You don't have to pretend anymore. I have heard all the rumors in the universe, and I also sense the existence of the power gem on your body. Admit it, you are not the Prince of Asgard, but my child. Although I don't know why you are disguised as an Asgardian, it is time for you to return to my arms. The first time I saw you, I sensed the feeling of blood connection between us. Iago said seriously. No matter what, this idiot will definitely not be my child. I warn you, watch your words. I'm a famous Star-Lord. Star-Lord jumped up angrily. Don't be like this, it's not your fault that your brain is not good. Rocket Raccoon Archfire Road. Drax smiled heartily on the side. Even if you are dumber than me, I will not discriminate against you. Seeing that several people were about to fight, Lu Lin slowly spoke. You really recognize the wrong person. But since you don't believe it, then I'll prove it to you personally. Saying that, Lu Lin took out the power gem and dragged Xingju over. Before everyone could react, Lu Lin slapped the power gem on Star-Lord's hand. In the next second, purple light burst out from Xingju's body. Destructive energy flows everywhere in the ship. In the blink of an eye, the spacecraft was destroyed. Thanks to Tony's timely response, everyone is given a protective suit that can survive in the universe, otherwise everyone will be suffocated in this universe. Lu Lin didn't expect this to be the case. The power gem, which had always been docile in his hands, reacted so much after touching Xingju. Quadruple A. Almost. Because at this time, Lu Lin had taken the power gem from Xingju's hand, and when it reached Lu Lin's hand, the power gem returned to its previous docile appearance. Xingju woke up like a dream. Huh. I'm fine. Lu Lin spread his hands and looked at Igo helplessly. Admit it, he is your son. After some mental struggle, Iago finally accepted the statement. Although the man in front of him looked a bit mentally retarded, he was able to touch the power gem himself, and the reaction was so great that it was enough to prove that he was his own child. Although there are all kinds of questions in his mind, such as why Igo is his father, why Lu Lin knows these things. But everyone decided to follow Iago to his planet first. However, because the ship was destroyed by the energy of the power gem, it could not sail normally, so the spacecraft was able to make a forced landing nearby. After deliberation, in fact, it was a lottery. In the end, Rocket Raccoon and Groot volunteered to stay and repair the spacecraft. Shit, my luck is also too bad. Rocket Raccoon scolded. I'm Groot. Rocket Raccoon sighed. Come on, let's start, hurry up and get it done, hurry up and catch up with them. They've already sent us a location, and then just go straight over. With that, the two of them began to repair the spaceship. Get moving, hurry, maybe we'll be able to make it to the end of their party. On the spaceship, everyone looked at each other and was speechless. On Igo's spaceship, everyone saw a strange-looking woman. The woman also has two antennae on her head and her eyeballs are pure black. That's right, this person is the Mantis Woman. Although everyone was very curious, no one dared to take the initiative to ask the tentacles of the praying Mantis Woman. After all, that's also too impolite. But Drax didn't care about that. His personality is very straightforward, and he can ask whatever comes to mind, so he asked very crisply, what is this tentacle on your head for? The praying Mantis Woman was a little nervous and a little afraid of life, but she still introduced her origin to everyone. The Mantis Woman is named Mandy's, and she grew up alone on the planet of Igo. And she was born with the ability to communicate people's hearts, and those two tentacles are his organs that can communicate people's hearts. The two tentacles on Mantis's head help her control the emotions of other creatures. On Igo's planet, all Mantis needs to do is generally help Igo fall asleep in human form. Mandy's looked at Iago with some confusion and said, I need to help him sleep. Wow, that's amazing. Drax sighed, and then he asked, so, you're his pet? What for? What are you dragging me for? Drax looked at Star-Lord a little strangely. No, Star-Lord was a little embarrassed. Where would he have thought that Drax would actually ask such a nonsense? Anyone who is asked will be angry if they are asked such offensive words, right? But Star-Lord didn't expect that Mandy's actually just smiled and shook his head to deny this answer. Pets, no, I'm me, Iago is Igo, I've never been anyone's pet. That, aren't you angry? Star-Lord asked cautiously. Why get angry? Mandy's tilted his head and asked innocently. He just asked me a very normal question, why should I be angry? Now it was Star-Lord's turn to be speechless. Mantis is somewhat innocent, and in her life, she has never offended the idea of evil. She doesn't mind anything and never gets offended by someone else's questions. As a creature that can understand people's hearts, her mind is a piece of innocence, which can't help but make people feel a subtle sense of contrast. And this may be related to the fact that since she was born, only Igo has been in contact with one person every day. In fact, Iago is also relatively defensive about Mandy's, and he never shows Mandy's his deepest secrets. A variety of factors superimposed, and finally Mandy's innocent and cute character has long been born. Okay. Star-Lord shrugged. He suddenly realized that in a sense, Drax and Mantis seemed to be an excellent couple. Drax was full of muscles and never thought about anything else. This leads to the fact that he is a helpless guy in terms of both IQ and emotional intelligence. The same is true of Mantis, although she can sense the emotions of others and read minds by touch. But she is equally naive and unsavvy. To some extent, although the two people have different reasons, the final result is the same, and to some extent, this can be regarded as the same path. During the small talk, time flew fast, and everyone finally arrived at their destination, Igo's planet. Although this planet is small, it is really beautiful. Perhaps out of love for beauty, Iago designed this planet beautifully. After all, this planet is his essence, and it is obviously a very normal thing to decorate his body beautifully. On the planet of Igo, various buildings and natural plants are perfectly integrated. In some places, plants even become part of the building, or even the main body of the building. The furniture and beds in some rooms are also made of plants, which looks harmonious and beautiful. No matter who it is, you can't help but be fascinated by this beautiful scenery. But as soon as he arrived on this planet, Lu Lin keenly sensed that something was wrong. After a moment, Lu Lin figured out the source of this force that made him feel wrong. Iago's body is constantly exuding an abnormal spiritual magnetic field, but all creatures that come to his planet will be affected by his magnetic field. However, this effect is almost equal to nothing for Lu Lin, but it will make him feel very uncomfortable psychologically. Even Tony, an Earthling, was not greatly affected, and he didn't even have any abnormal feelings. But what is certain is that if Tony stays in this environment for a long time, the future will definitely be affected. It's just that in what way this influence will manifest, Lu Lin is not clear for the time being. He didn't know what Igo's path was, and naturally he couldn't judge. But Lu Lin can roughly guess some. The end result is nothing more than becoming very much devoted to Iago, even as his inner god. The fate of such a creature is probably to become Igo's nourishment and disappear into this world. Although this mental effect is not very obvious, if you do not live here regularly, you can even be completely immune to this effect. Only a perverted person like Lu Lin can detect this. But at the same time, Lu Lin also noticed that this kind of minimal impact on these people gradually began to become different when it came to Star-Lord. Lu Lin was keenly aware that as time passed, Star-Lord's hostility and alienation towards his so-called father was slowly decreasing. At this rate, maybe it won't be long before Star-Lord will completely fall into the hands of Igo. However, Lu Lin was not worried about this at all. In the original history, Star-Lord could wake up from this state, and even finally killed Igo, and Lu Lin did not believe that this Star-Lord could not do this now. Therefore, he did not interfere with the fall of Star-Lord, because Lu Lin felt that this might be an important part of Star-Lord's growth path. Besides, if now he jumps out and says, "No, you can't recognize your father because he's a big badass, a big fool," and punches Igo, then he will only be hated by Star-Lord, and he will definitely not get Star-Lord's thanks. This kind of thankless thing, he will not do. As soon as the spaceship got off, Xingju and the others ran out very excitedly. This beautiful natural sight is very difficult to see. Even in the universe, such beautiful and harmonious natural scenes are very few existences. Living planets are already very rare, and most living planets also have intelligent creatures. And the planet that has not even evolved intelligent creatures, naturally there is no beautiful scenery. Since there are intelligent creatures, the natural environment of these planets will be modified and used by intelligent creatures. Therefore, such a completely pristine beauty that has not been affected by any intelligent beings is extremely rare in the universe. On the contrary, the style of bizarre alien technology, as well as the style of wasteland, is more common. Star-Lord and the others ran out with a puff of smoke, but Gamora did not leave with them, and she always had a question in her heart. Standing beside Igo, facing Igo, who has always had a kind face, Gamora failed to hold back the doubt in her heart. Although she joined the group only in search of the Infinity Stones, these people to her were more of a mutually exploiting existence. But to be honest, Gamora has also been active in this small group for quite some time. Saying that there is really no emotion between them, others believe that Gamora's own will not believe it, even if she has always warned herself not to have any emotional ties with these people. But how can such a thing as feelings be controlled by control? He said that he wanted to control his emotions and that he couldn't have too many entangled relationships with these people, but in fact, Gamora had long since fallen. She already slept in the same room as Xingju at night. Doesn't that explain something? No matter how much she usually hides her emotions and how she admonishes herself, the way the two people usually get along will not deceive. Therefore, even if the man in front of her claimed to be Igo's father, even if this man had always brought her a faint sense of threat. But she finally raised her inner question. What the hell are you? Or rather, what the hell are you? Others may not have noticed this, but she clearly saw that when Igo first appeared, he crossed the universe solely on his physical body. This is very abnormal. Don't think that the universe looks empty, as if it is very quiet and peaceful. But no matter what kind of creature, there are very few creatures that can survive in the universe by relying only on the flesh. Every such creature, or every race of these, is an extremely powerful being in the universe. For example, the Asgardians, there is one in front of Gamora's eyes, that is, Lurin. In Thanos, for example, and his very powerful men. Although Gamora is also a very good existence under Thanos, she also needs life support systems and life support equipment to move freely in the universe. Since Iago was able to do this, it was enough to show that he was a very powerful being in his own right. But Star-Lord had always thought that he was just an ordinary person, so how could his father be so powerful? Gamora felt that something was wrong, very wrong. Me. With that false, kind smile, Iago said slowly, I'm just an ordinary creature. Please follow me. Everyone followed Igo's footsteps to a room full of futuristic technology. In this room, Iago slowly recounted his origins. At first, Igo was just a brain. He had no abilities, only a hazy perception of the outside world. It took him millions of years to learn to control the power of molecules, so he built a planetary shell outside his brain. After millions of years of evolution, it became the small planet they see today. Iago introduced himself as being able to master molecular level power. What is this concept? You know, that was still his ability millions of years ago, and what kind of point he has grown to now, no one knows. In fact, in the original Marvel Universe, Igo was set to be a member of the Celestial God Group, but he is estimated to be the most depressed Celestial God Group in history. If you really want to say it, Igo's strength is not weak at all. In his first appearance, he destroyed the huge fleet of Sovereign with just one blow. His body has the ability to control the molecular level at the lowest level. He was killed by a battery bomb of a Sovereign star, and the death was really a little humiliated, a little casual. No matter how powerful he is, how can this be an independent movie of the Guardians of the Galaxy? No matter how awesome you are, you can't beat it. In fact, if someone wanted to emulate this method to kill Igo, there would be only one outcome. It was crushed alive by Iago. Not to mention how you should deal with the doppelganger of Igo, who is comparable to the strength of the Celestial God Group. Even if you luckily rush into the crust, Igo can control the crust and crush you into powder. God knows how far his abilities have evolved after so many years of evolution. Perhaps he can even control particles at the atomic level or even at the microscopic level. As for the original Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was influenced by Star-Lord, the father enemy. Not to mention the substances that control the molecular level, he can't even control the shell that makes up his body. Under the influence of Star-Lord, Igo eventually died tragically in the hands of a small bomber, and it was the young Groot gadget that put the bomb. Although Lu Lin knew about Iago's past and what he planned to do, he had no intention of stopping Igo. Because he wanted to see what the strength of Igo in his complete body state was, and whether he had reached the level of the Heavenly God Group now. Although Iago died very humbly in the original work, he didn't seem to have the style of the Tenjin Group at all. Think about it, what kind of existence are the other celestial god groups? Creating a race and destroying the world is just a wave of bullets. In comparison, Igo was killed by a few ordinary people, and the death was really a bit of a shame on the face of the celestial god group. But it is undeniable that Igo's is indeed a real celestial god group, and if he did not die in the plot killing, he still has a very strong strength. Lu Lin wanted to see what kind of level he was now. As an indicator of his strength, Igo, as a member of the Tenjin group, is undoubtedly a very suitable object. But now he doesn't plan to listen to Iago continue to talk nonsense about him. At this moment, Lu Lin's heart moved, quietly opened the system panel, and found that he was indeed able to sign in. This is the legendary Celestial God Group, a rare existence on weekdays. What kind of reward will you bring to yourself by signing into this existence? Lu Lin was looking forward to it. In the next second, he opened his mouth wide. Superman body silver. Lu Lin couldn't believe his eyes. Is Iago so powerful? Lu Lin immediately began to read the instructions given by the system. After reading the manual, he realized that this so-called superhuman body was far more powerful than he thought. In previous lives, there have always been divisions about Superman, such as Gold Superman, Silver Superman and Bronze Superman. In fact, these so-called superhumans refer to different things. Some are supermen of a certain era, and some are superhumans of a specific form. For example, Golden Superman, here is the supreme evolution of Superman in a certain story. The strength of Superman in this form has exceeded the so-called Celestial God Group by a lot, which is equivalent to the final boss level of the universe. He knows everything, does everything, can even be anywhere at any time, and the so-called time paradox is just a joke to him. Nothing could even hurt him. And the Bronze Superman is talking about the Superman after the Silver Age, and the Superman of this era has weakened a lot, and there are many more weaknesses, and the most appeared on the screen in later generations is also this version of Superman. This version of Superman has many weaknesses: magic, kryptonite. Silver Superman is talking about Superman who was in the Silver Age before the Bronze Age. Although the strength of superhumans at this stage is also within the acceptable range, it is actually far beyond people's imagination. How powerful is Silver Superman? Blow out the sun in one breath, destroy the star system with a sneeze, connect the planets in a chain, and then drag such a large string of planets to fly. He can even push the Earth back into orbit with just a breath. Superman in this era is so powerful that it's even a little boring. Apart from kryptonite, Superman doesn't even have obvious weaknesses, and even magic can't help him. And the superhuman body obtained by Lu Lin signing in is the Superman of this era. It's just that although Superman's body is powerful, his strength still needs to be slowly developed by Lu Lin. At least Lu Lin can't do such an exaggerated thing as blowing out the sun in one breath. Although it needs to be developed, it also means that Lu Lin's future is almost limitless. The outrageous existence of the multiverse that can be grasped at will may only be able to think about it, but the Golden Superman is not an impossible fantasy. Give Lu Lin enough time to feel that he can also evolve his Silver Superman to the point of Golden Superman. In the original book, it took nearly 10,000 years for Superman to evolve into the Golden Superman, and various things happened during this period. Lu Lin is not greedy. He spent 10,000 years superhuman. I have systematic blessings, not to mention, there should be no problem in evolving to this point within 1 or 2,000 years, right? However, Lu Lin is not the kind of person who is easy to get started, and soon he begins to study Superman's weaknesses. As we all know, Superman's biggest weakness is kryptonite. But the question now is, this is Marvel, not DC. Where did the kryptonite come from? But even so, Lu Lin was still a little uneasy. God knows what strange and outrageous things will exist in the multiverse, and if there really is kryptonite, then isn't he a complete calf? But soon, Lu Lin was relieved. Although he has the ability of Silver Superman, this does not mean that Silver Superman has replaced his body. Rather, Silver Superman is just one of his abilities. The fatal flaw of kryptonite is still there, but even if he stuffs kryptonite into Lu Lin's mouth, he will not be affected in any way. All that kryptonite affects is his efficiency when using superhuman abilities. To put it simply, if Lu Lin really eats a large dose of kryptonite into his stomach, then all powers except Superman's body will not be affected in any way. Lu Lin can still blast an asteroid with a deliberate punch with full power. This discovery excited Lu Lin. This means that he has a lot more whole cards. Imagine that when someone felt that they had discovered Lu Lin's weakness and used this weakness to deal with him, Lu Lin deliberately punched the other party in the face with full force. Just thinking about this scene, Lu Lin couldn't help himself. Excited, Lu Lin planned to go out and see the scenery. As for the development of ability, it is still necessary to wait for later, find an opportunity for no one, run to a lifeless galaxy and slowly develop. Now develop his own ability. I am afraid that Igo will soon be slapped to death by himself. Wilderness, snowy mountains and grassland forests, red, white, green and green, these colors will indeed make people feel happy. Of course, the premise is to ignore the seemingly insignificant spiritual influence that comes with the planet Igo. In a sense, the entire planet is a body made by Iago, but that doesn't mean Lurin is playing on Igo's body now. In fact, Iago's real body is only that brain, and everything outside is a shell he made. If you really want to compare, this asteroid is more like Igo's armor, so enjoying the scenery on this, Lulin is not a psychological burden at all. At this time, Xingju has also fast-forwarded to the father's filial piety link, and the two of them are like a real father and son who have not seen each other for many years, and their feelings have heated up in a straight line. Soon, the others were a little overwhelmed. Drax didn't feel any of this, but he was very interested in Mantis, and the two of them quickly went to whisper. Apparently, Mantis was also very interested in Drax. Tony, on the other hand, was very interested in the asteroid itself, and he wondered how the planet existed in this universe. So Tony quietly launched an investigation of the planet. As for Gamora, he turned away and went to distract himself alone. Seeing this scene, she couldn't help but feel a little sad in her heart. Shu remembered her ruthless righteous father, and she was not in a very good mood. Maybe it's envy or maybe it's other emotions. In short, Gamora doesn't want to stay with Star-Lord anymore. From the beginning to the present, the attitude shown by Iago is really difficult to make people feel bad, especially since he is still Star-Lord's father. As Star-Lord's friend and perhaps lover, Gamora knew that she should not disturb the reunion of their father and son at this time. But now, she saw how Igor looked unpleasant, so he simply ran out of sight and out of mind, and ran out alone to relax. And Xingju was guided by Igo, excavated the power in his body, and began to borrow Igo's heavenly god power. It took Iago millions of years to learn to master his own powers, control his abilities, and learn to tap the potential in his body. Xingju is not a genius, and he is only a few dozen years old, so naturally there is no way to tap the power of the heavenly gods in his body. Therefore, the power he is using now is actually borrowed from Igo. This is also why in the original work, as soon as Igo died, Star-Lord lost all his power. Because that power is not his. As for what Iago said, when he dies, Star-Lord will become an ordinary person, which is purely a lie to coax Star-Lord. He said that at the time, just to survive. Star-Ju's father is a true celestial god group. How can Star-Lord be an ordinary person? How could there be no power in his body that could be discovered? It's just that Star-Lord doesn't realize this at all. If he really has no potential at all, no strength at all, then why does Iago use his hands to complete his plan? Is the so-called ability to inherit the qualifications of the heavenly god just a tool to increase Igo's strength? Apparently not. So from beginning to end, Iago is deceiving Star-Lord into thinking that he actually has no ability at all. Because only in this way can he better control Star-Lord and let him help him complete his plan. It's just that Iago didn't expect that he tried his best to guide, and in the end, Star-Lord still didn't choose him. And Star-Lord, who had learned to master the power of the celestial god, began to expand. This feeling of being full of power made him intoxicated. With a wave of your hand, it is a powerful energy attack, which can easily destroy a small mountain. This feeling of omnipotence made Xingju feel that he could do it again. So the swollen Star-Lord immediately found Drax in a hurry, intending to practice with Drax. On weekdays, the strength gap between the two of them is huge, and Star-Lord is not Drax's opponent at all. He was often overwhelmed by the force Drax inadvertently exerted. But now, the tide has turned. As a result, there was no doubt that Drax was naturally not his opponent. Star-Lord's confidence swelled again, so he turned his gaze to Tony. Drax can no longer satisfy him, and when facing Drakus, he will only have a feeling of bullying children. But Tony did not hesitate to refuse Star-Lord, so at this time he was studying the wonders of this planet. But Star-Lord kept pestering Tony, which made him very impatient. In the end, Tony, who was annoyed, gave Star-Lord a bad idea. Go find Lulin, he should be able to make you recognize yourself. Ju didn't know that there was a fraud, and after a little thought, he suddenly went to find Lulin happily like a wild dog out of control. Looking at Star-Lord's departing back, Tony revealed a sinister smile. But soon, his brows furrowed. Although he was just an ordinary person, his superb IQ brought far beyond the spiritual power of ordinary people, but it made him keenly aware that something was wrong. What is it to be a mortal body, comparable to a god? This is the gold content of Tony's brain. Originally Tony did not plan to scan this planet. After all, people Igo didn't say that this planet is his body. Rashly open the scanning of the planet, will not Igo see it as offended? No matter how bad Tony is, he won't do such a thing. Therefore, he was going to come secretly. Analyze the plants on the surface first, and then slowly go deeper, finally, analyze the entire planet. However, no matter how hard Tony tried, the results of the data analysis told him that this was a normal asteroid that could no longer be normal. But how could Tony possibly accept such an outcome? A motionless asteroid floating in the universe, with many life on it, and not even a single star around him. You say this is normal. It's not normal at all. Soon, Tony discovers where that strange feeling comes from. Because this planet looks like it is vibrant, but in fact, there is no complete ecosystem on this planet. Plants that can be seen with the naked eye are still in line with the ecosystem, but bacteria at the microscopic level are almost invisible. As for animals, there are only a few. This is not a normal ecosphere at all. Such an ecosystem will collapse in less than 3 days at most. But according to Mantis, the scenery of the various areas of the planet has not changed for many years. Tony felt that he had grasped the crux of the problem and immediately began to study this aspect. And when Star-Lord found Lu Lin, he was lying on the grass and closing his eyes. Lu Lin was resting on the surface, but in fact, he was slowly experiencing the powerful power in his body and thinking about how to develop this power. At this moment, Xingju's mean voice came, "Look at the move." Lu Lin was seriously studying the power in his body at this time, and he completely lost his perception of the outside world, and in addition to Xingju's attack, it was not painful for Lu Lin at all. Therefore, Lu Lin was actually defenseless at all, and was directly pasted on his face by the energy bomb thrown by Xingju. Lu Lin's face sank, and he slowly opened his eyes. Xingju saw Lu Lin's dark face, and the smile on his face suddenly retracted, and he felt bad. Although this attack didn't use much strength for him, he didn't expect that Lu Lin would actually dodge without flashing, and directly took his face to hard connect. Broken. Xingju was shocked in his heart. When he saw his attack fall on Lu Lin's face, he knew that there was no need to fight any longer, and it would be nothing more than self-inflicted humiliation to continue. He just wanted to test his abilities, he didn't have the habit of being beaten like a sandbag. Thinking so, Xingju wanted to break away. "Sorry, I didn't find you resting, so you continue to rest, just because I haven't been here, okay?" With that, Star-Lord turned around and strode away. "Let me go. I was wrong. Want to escape?" Lu Lin snorted coldly. "I still want to leave if I offend." With that, he stood up and instantly came to Xingju, lightly punching out. That's right, he was really light, and he didn't use any more force. After all, it was just a fight between friends, and if he really hammered Xingju to death with one punch, it would be a lot of fun. He still has to find a way to resurrect Star-Lord. Maybe Iago will also turn his face with him, and then it will be troublesome. It's not that he's afraid of Igo, but what would Star-Lord do if he hammered Iago to death? How to grow? However, what Lu Lin didn't expect was that perhaps he had collected too much power, and this punch was actually blocked by Xingju. Even Xingju was stunned when he saw this scene. What's going on? Before Xingju finished speaking, Lu Lin increased his strength a little and hit again. Good, come, let me see how long you can hold out. Lu Lin smiled. Xingju didn't have time to explain, so he could only raise his hand to parry. As Lu Lin's attack became faster and faster, and the force used became more and more, Xingju was already a little unable to hold on. Wrong, big brother, please let me go. I couldn't hold on. That's not going to work. It's still early. Lu Lin smiled, and actually increased the amplitude of his output again. When he fought with Xingju, he was already very controlling, and this was not even 1/10,000th of his strength. Lu Lin also found that the limit of Star-Lord was much more than that. At least Lu Lin felt that he still had the strength to parry, even if the strength he used was not big enough. However, in the next second, a fist appeared violently on Xingju's face. Obviously, at this time, Lu Lin's output range had exceeded the limit of Star-Lord, and he was directly powerless to fight back. But Lu Lin didn't stop. 5 minutes later, Lu Lin put his hand back refreshed, and at this time, Xingju had also turned into a pig's head. Xingju gasped and said with a sad face, "I feel like my teeth are going to be knocked out." "I'm very measured." Lu Lin smiled. Saying that, he glanced at Xingju and said lightly, "Huh. You say, am I right?" Although Star-Lord's attack was nothing to Lu Lin, he had been immersed in his own world just now, completely oblivious to what was happening outside. For Lu Lin, Star-Lord's attack was equivalent to having a person who was concentrating on watching a comedy movie and was shouted from behind. It's not scary, but there will definitely be unhappiness. This is the reason why Lu Lin took revenge on Star-Lord. Xingju looked at Lu Lin's face and nodded with difficulty. "Yes, very measured. It's just a discussion, it's just a discussion." "Then do you want to thank me for my advice?" Lu Lin said with a smile. Yes, thank you for your advice, thank you for your advice." Star-Lord spoke through his leaky mouth as he prepared to turn around and flee here. "It's terrible, it's really terrible. Why is this guy Lu Lin so careful with his eyes?" Xingju made up his mind that he must stay away from Lu Lin in the future, let alone easily provoke him. If he remembers it, then he will really be completely finished. "Wait a minute." Lu Lin's voice came again. Xingju's face was about to wrinkle into a chrysanthemum. "How? What's wrong?" "It's okay, you wait a minute." Lu Lin glanced thoughtfully at Xingju. He feels that the strength of the ability given by the system check-in is generally directly linked to the sign-in object. For example, when he signed into those smelly fish and rotten shrimp before, he naturally gave some skills that were useless. It can't be said that it is not strong, it can only be said that for Lu Lin it is just chicken ribs. The strength and status of the check-in object seem to be factors that affect the check-in result. It's just that Lu Lin has never been very sure, in order to cherish the precious check-in opportunity, so he has never wasted his check-in opportunity on a fool like Star-Lord. But now Star-Lord is a version that has been strengthened by his father. According to Star-Lord's current strength, if you sign in, you may be able to get some good things. Asking Star-Lord to stop was also for this purpose. Boundary breakthrough. Super Saiyan. Lu Lin's eyes suddenly lit up. Super Saiyan, this is a good thing. Can I leave now? Xingju swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and cautiously asked Lu Lin, who was standing in a daze. It's okay, you can go. Lu Lin waved his hand. With that, Lu Lin began to study his newly acquired abilities. Super Saiyan is a well-known thing, and this ability comes from the Saiyan in Dragon Ball. Saiyans can improve their combat power by transforming into Super Saiyans. But just by transforming from a Saiyan to a Super Saiyan, you can instantly increase your combat effectiveness by 50 times. Not to mention the variety of patterns behind. The well-known form of Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3 naturally needless to say, these are everyone's childhood memories. And later, there was Super Saiyan IV who transformed into a red monkey, as well as Super Saiyan Blue, Super Saiyan God and other powerful states. However, the Great Ape and the Freedom Extreme skill are not part of the transformation of the Super Saiyan. Therefore, if you want to be comfortable with such an extremely perverted thing, even if you need Lu Lin to comprehend it himself. Are Super Saiyans powerful? Nature is very powerful. Super Saiyan battles can destroy a planet casually, and in the later stage, they even hit the multiverse. But if you really want to compare with Lu Lin's current ability, it is indeed a little inadequate. If the system only gave Super Saiyan abilities, Lu Lin would have little interest. Developing Silver Superman is already very difficult, enough for him to use, and then to study what Super Saiyan is, that is pure as to lose watermelon and pick up sesame. No matter how strong the Super Saiyan is in combat, can he blow out the stars in one go? But soon, Lu Lin didn't think so, and he also knew why the name of the reward given by the system was Boundary Breakthrough, Super Saiyan. Up. Because the system rewards him as not actually a Super Saiyan bloodline, but the ability to transform. The so-called boundary breakthrough is to give Lu Lin the opportunity to break through his own boundaries. According to the original setting, transforming into a Super Saiyan requires enough S cells in the body. But Lu Lin is not even a Saiyan, so what about S cells? Therefore, the transformation given by the system is actually only the form and ability of the borrowed Super Saiyan, not the real Saiyan to become a Saiyan. If you really want to say, if Lu Lin can successfully transform, maybe it can be called a Super Asgardian talent. In the original setting, it was actually very difficult to transform into a Super Saiyan for the first time. And if you want to transform into a Super Saiyan, you need to have a pure heart. Whether it is pure and angry goodness or pure evil heart, as long as the mind is pure, you can transform into a Saiyan. But in fact, transforming into a Super Saiyan requires the most extreme and pure emotions. That alone is enough for Luren. He has no national hatred, and he is not an earthling like the Monkey King in the Dragon Ball universe who is about to die. Where can he get such pure emotions? Needless to say, in general, if you want to transform into a Super Saiyan, the higher your strength under normal conditions, the easier it will be to transform. But the problem is that Lu Lin is not a Saiyan, and secondly, his strength is too high. And this makes it even more difficult for him to truly succeed in transformation. Super Saiyan 1 can increase its combat effectiveness by 50 times compared to its normal form. Just imagine, a Superman in his heyday increased his combat effectiveness by 50 times, what kind of concept is that? Lu Lin felt his scalp tingle just thinking about it. For him, even if he only doubles his strength, it is enough for him to have the confidence to face the vast majority of enemies in this universe. Not to mention 50 times more combat effectiveness. If he can really reach this step, Lu Lin feels that he will already be able to break through the limitations of the single universe. The ability is powerful, but the difficulty of Lu Lin's transformation is basically hell level compared to the Monkey King in the original work. Compared with Lu Lin, the difficulty of becoming a Super Saiyan into a Super Saiyan is basically within the scope of the baby bus. The prerequisite for becoming a Super Saiyan is that you first develop your potential. Only after developing the potential in the normal state to the point where it is impossible to continue to develop it, in this case, break through your own limitations and transform into a Super Saiyan. After that, continue to cultivate and continue to accumulate, and then repeat the process of the previous time to break through to the next stage. In short, the transformation process of Super Saiyans is actually a process of constantly breaking through self-limits. If it had been placed a few hours ago, Lu Lin would naturally be happy to get this ability. Isn't it just to break through your limits? What a simple thing. But the problem is that just a few hours ago, he had just checked in with Igo and gained the ability of Silver Superman. Now he doesn't want to say that he has developed his own limits, it takes a lot of effort just to fully master his own strength. If you really wait until you fully develop your potential, even if Lu Lin can't evolve into a golden Superman, there's nothing more uncomfortable than that. The order of these two check-in rewards is reversed. If it's the one you got first, Boundary Breakthrough Super Saiyan, Lu Lin can first transform into a Super Saiyan and experience that feeling. If you are completely proficient, even with the ability of Silver Superman, it should not be difficult to change back again. But now the order of the two rewards is reversed, which causes Lu Lin to transform into a Super Saiyan and first develop the potential of Silver Superman. And after developing the potential of Silver Superman, Lu Lin will be too strong because of his own strength, which makes it even more difficult to break through his limits. As for the pure extreme emotions, it was even more nonsense, and Lu Lin felt that he would never experience that kind of thing in his life. So the question is, how exactly should Lu Lin transform? Even Lu Lin couldn't think of a way to transform now. Alas, Lu Lin sighed. The so-called entering the treasure mountain and returning empty, probably his current mood. However, Lu Lin was an optimistic person, and soon he relaxed and stopped dwelling on this matter. Although this reward is almost equivalent to nothing, don't you still have Silver Superman? Think about it another way, Super Saiyan is also a whole card of its own. If you really encounter an enemy that you can't deal with in the future, maybe you can burst in battle, transform into a Super Saiyan, and directly overturn your opponent. However, with this, Lu Lin can probably determine that the reward given by the system check-in is probably positively related to the strength of the sign-in object. The stronger the object of check-in, the better the reward given by the system. Therefore, if you encounter any well-known figure in the future, look at the strength of the other party. Lu Lin can judge whether this person is worth signing in. It may not be accurate, but at least there will be no wasted check-ins. After all, every check-in is very precious to Lu Lin. Xingju looked at Lu Lin, who was happy for a while and sighed for a while, and felt a pang of fear in his heart. It's over, he shouldn't be crazy. Star-Lord was afraid that he would be beaten again by Lu Lin, and quietly prepared to leave. At this moment, Gamora, anxiously, ran over. Peter, I think something is wrong. Peter Quill is the whole people of Star-Lord, and everyone in the Guardians of the Galaxy usually likes to call him Peter. Only Lu Lin kept calling him Xingju at the request of Star-Lord, which made him very satisfied. As for the others, it is still more customary to call him Peter. Shish. After seeing Star-Lord's face clearly, Gamora suddenly took a sharp breath of cold air. What's going on with you? No, this is Bai. Xingju glanced at Lu Lin, and half of what he said was immediately swallowed by him. It's me, I fell by myself. Gamora glanced at the two and immediately guessed the approximate of what happened. Starju is this kind of person who is uncomfortable without committing a slut, and now this scene is already obvious. It is clear that Xingju committed a slut, and then was sanctioned by Lu Lin. Don't talk about that. Xingju decisively changed the topic. You just said something wrong. What's wrong? I always feel that this planet is full of weirdness. Gamora frowned. There is a huge planet, there are almost no animals, don't you think this is very abnormal? Normal, Xingju said. Of course, I think it's normal. Isn't there a little less animals? What's wrong with that? Star-Lord said without care. My father is a god after all, how could he allow those brainless things that can defecate openly to walk on his body? That's disgusting, isn't it? Star-Lord was amused by his own jokes. His explanation seems impeccable, but that doesn't explain how the planet's anomalous ecology came about. Besides, he's a celestial god group. Do you know the celestial god group? Xingju said with dancing hands. The Void Land is made up of the remains of the heads of a large celestial god group. It's too dangerous for you here. Gamora was still trying to persuade Star-Lord. A strange group of celestial gods suddenly jumped out and said it was your father. Xingju's face was a little ugly. What is called, for me, too dangerous? Huh, what is too dangerous for me? Star-Lord repeated again. Obviously, this sentence poked at his pain point, making Star-Lord, who was not very emotionally normal, become more and more radical. Can't I have such a powerful father? Xingju said with some anger. Obviously, Gamora's words did not expect that her words would be so lethal to Star-Lord, and she was also a little flustered at the moment. No, I didn't mean it with that. Gamora took 2 steps back in a bit of panic. Just what? Xingju stepped forward 2 steps excitedly and said angrily, then tell me, what do you mean? What are you trying to express? No, I. Star-Lord's emotions became more and more excited. Can I only be an intergalactic pirate? You can't stop other people from getting their own happiness just because you had a bad childhood. He didn't know what Gamora's past was like, he only vaguely knew that Gamora's past was not very happy. Star-Lord looked at Gamora coldly, wantonly using the most vicious words to hurt the other party. I see that you are just jealous that I have a heavenly god father. Snap. A crisp sound. Gamora was trembling with anger. This was not the first time she had done something to Star-Lord, nor was it the first time she had hit someone. But the nature of this slap at the moment is completely different. For a while, everyone was stunned, and even Lu Lin, who was originally watching a good show, felt a little wrong at this moment. It's completely finished, Gamora said angrily. You don't know what I've been through in the past, or what kind of environment I grew up in. You don't know anything about my past. Gamora angrily pointed her finger at Star-Lord's chest. You have no right to dictate to me. You're an incorrigible fool. We're completely finished, Mr. Quill. Gamora said coldly. I wish you and your so-called heavenly godfather a good future. Samora. He turned and left. How so? Xingju was stunned. He is actually a soft and sensitive person at heart. Don't look at him all day, but he actually hides a lot of things in his heart. Everyone knows that when he was on Earth, he was very sensitive since childhood because he did not have a father and lacked father's love. Later, he was taken to the Interstellar and became an interstellar pirate, if only that. After all, Courage was once a member of the Marauder Legion, and this group had a fairly good reputation in the universe. But courage is soon kicked out, after which he begins to fall completely, doing many things that damage the reputation of the Marauder Legion. Therefore, even in the universe, Star-Lord has almost become a rat crossing the street that everyone shouts at. At the same time, only one of the walkmen left for him by his mother was by Star-Lord's side. Therefore, this leads to Xingju's great desire to be recognized by others and very much to get ahead. He hated Courage even more, even if Courage did not actually treat him badly. Or rather, it's not like hatred, more like the kind of grudge that an immature child has towards his father. The most important thing for children to accept is that their father is not perfect, and no father can perfectly give his child everything he wants. But even so, Star-Lord really longed too much to have a real father. And now, the so-called father who appeared in front of his eyes was simply synonymous with perfection in his heart. He is mysterious, powerful, kind. Iago doesn't force him to do things he doesn't like to do, and is willing to share his power with him. How many people in the universe want to become powerful, and countless people have paid a huge price for this. Now there is actually a person who is willing to share his power with him for free. Who else can this kind of person have besides his father? This is a cup of sweet poison, and Star-Lord is sweet. What's more, under the influence of the magnetic field of this planet, Star-Lord has long ceased to be the previous Star-Lord. I was right, ha. He was embarrassed. Star-Lord said without care. Do you know how strong I am now? Star-Lord said loudly to Gamora, who was fading away. When I grow up, countless people will come to give me a hug. I'm not rare at all, and I don't care about a green-skinned alien in your area. Gamora didn't look back. She walked forward, turned her back to Star-Lord and raised a middle finger, Faxquid. What do you think? Xingju turned his head to look at Lu Lin, seemingly unconcerned, but in fact, his eyes were full of hope. Lu Lin naturally knew what he wanted, which was nothing more than an approval. But he wouldn't give Star-Lord what he wanted. No, Gamora's right, you are indeed an incorrigible fool. In fact, at this time, Lu Lin felt sorry for Gamora. After all, Star-Lord's side was too complicated. But if you think about it, you don't have to worry about the two of them. There are a lot of messy things on Star-Lord's side. Could it be that things on Gamora's side are simple? Let's not say anything else, but saying a Thanos is enough to give Star-Lord a headache. Not to mention that Gamora, who also has a ruthless killer sister Nebula. So if you really want to say, the two of them can only be said to be a pair made in heaven, and they can't match anymore. What do you mean? Xingju's face was a little ugly. If you think Gamora is jealous of you, then I can't be jealous of you. Lu Lin said lightly. Think about it, I am the Prince of Asgard, the next Lord of the Nine Realms. I don't need to be jealous of your father at all, do I? What's so great about the Celestial God group? My strength will eventually grow to the point where it is not inferior to the Celestial God group, right? Although these words hurt, you can't deny that I am right. Star-Lord looked at Lu Lin and nodded reluctantly. So, what are you trying to express? Could it be that you mean that everything I hold dear is worthless in your eyes? Lu Lin shook his head. I didn't mean that. I just want to tell you that what I said is absolutely impartial and absolutely unselfish. Because your so-called heavenly godfather is not as good as you think. What? Xingju felt that his throat was a little dry, and he looked at Lu Lin stunned. What do you mean? I won't explain it to you, because now even if I say it, you won't believe it. Lu Lin said lightly. Igo is mysterious, but this does not mean that no one knows about him. You can ask your father, Courage, or you can find out for yourself. I will say it all, and you can experience the rest yourself. What you see with your own eyes is more convincing than what others tell you. Lu Lin waved his hand and turned to leave. Before leaving, Lu Lin intentionally or unintentionally looked at a grass next to him, and with a wave of his hand, an eye in the grass quietly and completely annihilated. In the distance, Iago straightened his expression sharply, and his expression was gloomy. That's right, just now he kept watching what was happening over there. Xingju became what he is now, and he also did it intentionally. Iago wants to make Star-Lord alone, that is, to make him without any friends around and interfere with his choices. His plan has not yet fully formed, so he has time to slowly condition Star-Lord, so he cannot be in such a hurry. Therefore, before cultivating Star-Lord to be what he wants, he must help Star-Lord get rid of those useless emotions. What is the use of these lower creatures? Their lifespans are too short, and their way of life is too low. So Iago never thought these people could compare with himself. Of course, he knew that Star-Lord would definitely not allow him to do this, so he made his decision for Star-Lord without permission. Iago believes that Star-Lord will understand his painstaking efforts in the future. He will understand that only the gods and gods are of the same kind. Among this group, the only thing Iago is more worried about is Lulin. After all, Lulin's strength is really there, and before the plan is completed, Iago is really not confident that he can confront Lulin head-on. He could always feel a sense of threat from Lulin. That's why he's always disguised himself well. If Lulin hadn't been there, his methods might have been a little more radical. But now the situation is okay. After all, Lulin has taken the initiative to leave. Looking at Lulin's departing back, Iago's gaze flickered. The rest of the people don't need to worry at all, he only needs to move his fingers, he can easily crush all these people. Of course, this kind of thing must not be done in front of Star-Lord, because then he will have to spend more time dealing with Star-Lord. The gains outweigh the losses. He just needs to make Star-Lord a rebel, and perhaps the only tricky thing is the armored weirdo. Lulin left not because he didn't want to take Star-Lord anymore, but because he received a message from Rocket Raccoon and Groot for help. He didn't know what had happened to Groot, but Lulin thought it would be better to go and see for himself. 3 hours ago, Rocket Raccoon put down the wrench in his hand, finally done. The tools Tony left behind are really useful. Looking up, the Rocket Raccoon frowned slightly. Why is it already so late? He glanced at his edited watch. Has it been so long? Ready to start. Rocket Raccoon stretched and then pressed the ship's start button. But after a roar, the engine suddenly stalled. It's over, it seems that we can't walk now. Rocket Raccoon said helplessly. It should be that there is a problem inside the engine. He glanced at the nano repair tool left by Tony. This thing has no energy yet, it can only wait for the star to appear tomorrow and rely on light energy to charge. Rocket Raccoon stepped off the spaceship helplessly. Now the lounge has not been repaired, it seems that we can only sleep in the wild tonight. Fortunately, they have already taken protective measures around before, so even if they are camping, they don't have to worry about wild beasts attacking. However, Rocket Raccoon is not very relieved, because sleeping rough in the planet, it is not only the natives of the planet that need to worry. So he also deliberately set up a few more protective traps. Just when he had just raised the fire and was about to sit comfortably by the fire and enjoy the night, the warning traps he had set around him were all triggered in an instant. Listening to the sirens that kept sounding around him, the Rocket Raccoon immediately realized that this was someone preparing to attack him. Hide. The Rocket Raccoon hurried to get the weapon. Where did these guys come from? Now that the spacecraft can't take off, they can only go by standing up and resisting. But the problem is, it's too late, he's already locked in. Red light flashed, and a silver-white whistle arrow floated quietly in front of the Rocket Raccoon. Groot, put down your weapons and don't act rashly. Rocket Raccoon raised his hand and shouted, I'm Groot. Groot put down the weapon in his hand very unwillingly, and obediently stood in place and raised his hands. In the darkness, a blue-skinned alien appeared in front of the two. Rocket Raccoon's eyes lit up. I recognize you, this is all a misunderstanding. You're Star-Lord's father, right, you're also one of the famous Marauders. Rocket Raccoon said excitedly. Look, these are all misunderstandings, can we put the weapon down first? Yondu's face was not very good looking. This is not a misunderstanding. Tell me, where is Star-Lord? Hey, wait, you didn't say that. Yondu's subordinates were suddenly a little dissatisfied. Didn't you just say to take us to make a fortune? Why is that traitor mentioned again now? Shut up, Yondu said viciously. If you really want to get rich, listen to me, don't interrupt me. Or do you want to ruin everyone's way to get rich? The man suddenly fell silent. Answer me, don't you? Yondu turned his head sharply and looked at the man viciously. Or are you planning to disobey my orders and betray us? That's right, I'm just not convinced that you mention that traitor every time. As soon as his words fell, the whistle arrow slammed through his head. I never be soft on traitors. Yondu turned his head and looked at the group of people coldly. Now, is there anyone else who wants to say something? There was silence among his men. Now, tell me, where did that guy go? This, Rocket Raccoon didn't know if he should say these things, but now that the form was stronger than a human, he could only say it helplessly. Go find his father, a man who claims to be his father. Rocket Raccoon said it intermittently. Ha, bravery, you think that guy is a son, but this guy doesn't seem to be going to treat you as a father. Chapter 91. I already knew that he was a little mongrel who didn't know gratitude. Yondu's face was very ugly, and the thing he was most worried about really happened. As for the two guys who defied his authority, now he couldn't care about repairing them. Although he didn't know Iago's true purpose, he knew what happened to the children he had brought to Iago before. After so many years of care, Yondu has long regarded Xingju as his real child, otherwise he would not have indulged Xingju so much. In the end, it's just that these two people don't understand each other. Are you going to find Star-Lord? Rocket Raccoon asked tentatively. What are you looking for him for? What are you looking for him for? Yondu's face was extremely dark. You have no idea what kind of person his so-called father is. Yondu said angrily. You fools, you have killed Peter. Why don't I understand what you mean? Rocket Raccoon was a little confused. Peter found his biological father, shouldn't this have been a good thing? Good thing, Yondu sneered. You don't understand at all, you don't understand anything. However, at this moment, a gunshot rang out, and the controller used to control the whistle arrow above Yondu's head was completely damaged. This whistle arrow was connected to the nerves of his brain, and after being violently damaged, he instantly lost all consciousness. Rocket Raccoon was completely stunned by what he saw. What's the situation? What's the situation? I have long seen that he is unhappy. The man who shot said, he has always only had that earth monkey in his heart. There is no group of our brothers at all. So we decided to go it alone. Not only that, but we also have to find Peter and kill them all in front of Brave. Yes, kill Peter first, then Star-Lord. Rocket Raccoon suddenly felt troubled. What he fears most is this crazy fool who only has killing in his mind. Since Yondu and I are not in the same group, can you let me go? Rocket Raccoon laughed. Let you go, the man sneered. You are a small thing, but it is worth a lot. Wait, I'll sell you and your acquaintances and friends for a good price. An hour later, Yondu came to his senses. At this time, he is locked up with Rocket Raccoon and Groot, waiting for death to come. You're awake, Rocket Raccoon said weakly. It looks like we're going to be completely finished. Yondu sat up with difficulty and looked at the Milky Way outside the window stunned, not knowing what he was thinking. They executed all the crew who supported you, and they plan to find Star-Lord and kill you all together. Rocket Raccoon said very strangely. What does it matter, we're going to die soon anyway. Yondu said lightly. Don't you expect someone to come and save us? Courage did not take care of the Rocket Raccoon. But Rocket Raccoon couldn't calm down, he was very interested in the past. Come, tell me. Why did you keep Peter in the first place? Why? Because he's small, he can steal where we can't. Yondu said lightly. Isn't this something he has said many times? Rocket Raccoon pouted, not recognizing Brave's words at all. They are intergalactic pirates, where do they use children to steal? And this doesn't explain why Courage has always been very protective of Star-Lord. Are you really unwilling to talk about it? Rocket Raccoon asked curiously. Since you know that we are all going to die soon, is it possible that you still plan to take this secret to the grave? You're that curious. Yondu slowly closed his eyes. He had kept these things in his heart for many years and had never mentioned them to anyone. But in this situation, it is better to talk. As a member of the Marauders, Courage has always adhered to the iron laws of the Marauders, one of which the Marauders will never do to children and women. At the beginning, Yondu was not actually smuggling and selling children, because the commission he received from Igona was to retrieve his lost child. Although it feels very strange, but Yondu didn't think much about it. Isn't it just a commission to find someone, and you can still make money, why not? To be honest, sending people to reunite their families, he is also doing good. But gradually, Yondu realized that something was wrong, and over the years, he helped Igo find countless children, but never saw any of them a second time. Finally, he discovers that Iago brutally killed all his children, one after another. Therefore, Star-Lord was left behind by courage. He knew that he couldn't send Star-Lord back, because then he would definitely be found by others in the future and sent to Iago. In order to protect Peter, Yondu made up a lie that the child had stolen it himself. He also became notorious and was completely expelled from the Marauder Legion. To be honest, didn't Yondu even have a little resentment towards Xingju in his heart? Definitely not. After all, the proudest thing in his life is to be a member of the Marauders. The fact that he was expelled from the ranks of the Marauders dealt him a great blow, which also created his current courage. But even so, he never violated the iron law of the Marauders, never. He never told Peter these things, no one knew his suffering, and courage endured all of them in silence. He knew that Iago was powerful, so he had been afraid to speak up. As for Star-Lord's rebellion, he didn't care. Anyway, with his protection, Star-Lord would definitely not be in danger. But Yondu never expected that Xingju would eventually be exposed. Not only that, but his men also betrayed him, and now he is not only alone, but also a waste waiting for death to come. Wow, Rocket Raccoon exclaimed, the story behind this is better than I thought, more twists. I'm Groot. At the same time, Tony found Lulin. I researched it. What? Power gem, Tony said excitedly. Lulin reacted immediately. In fact, when Tony knew about the existence of the power gem, he was eager to use it. And the power gem is of little use in Lulin's hands, and he naturally supports Tony to do so. It's just that the power of the power gem is too strong, so Tony's experiments on using the power gem have not been very smooth. Therefore, the power gem has always been kept in Lulin's hands. After Tony found a way to use the power gem, Lulin naturally shared it with Tony without minding. For Lulin, a power gem has almost no effect on his strength. He also disdained to use this kind of thing. Rather than using them himself, he was keen to see what would happen if he gave these gems to someone who had not previously touched them. For example, the power gem is to Iron Man. Lulin even considered whether to get the space gem to hit Tony. If you can get more gems in the future, such as reality gems and other things, you can also get them for Tony. In previous lives, it was always said that Tony was a god with a mortal body. Now Lulin wants to see if Tony, who has so many gems, can face Thanos head-on. Even thinking about it later, if you can strengthen Tony, the celestial god group is not invincible. Lulin was still looking forward to this unfolding. Tony carefully set the power gem in front of the reactor on his chest. In the next second, the purple light was masterpiece. The power gem did not stay on Tony's chest, but swam to Tony's forehead. His armor also changed to purple, and Tony's size was much larger. A powerful force rushed through Tony's body, making him can't help but let out a long roar. You're in a very wrong situation. Lulin frowned. However, Tony is not lonely at all now. You go to Lurin, talk. His armored mask opened, revealing his excited face, and at this moment, purple lines had gradually spread to his face. Apparently, Tony has been eroded by the power of the power gem. Lulin sighed slightly. Sure enough, not just anyone could control the power gem. Not even Tony. Just like the psychic scepter in the original book, the mere existence affects all the Avengers. For ordinary creatures, the power of the Infinity Stones is still too dangerous. Now Tony is a bit like the inflated Star-Lord before, laughing maniacally and about to launch an attack on Lulin. However, cruelly, even with the power gem, Tony is still no match for Lulin. Lulin immediately taught him to be a new person in minutes. Before Tony could even make a move, Lulin directly slammed the power gem off his head. Then, the magic was thrown at Tony as if he didn't want money. The huge magical power even directly washed Tony's soul, causing him to lose consciousness for a few seconds for a short time. Moments later, when Tony returned to normal, he almost didn't stand still. Tony staggered back a few steps and sat on the ground with one butt. This feeling, too bad. Tony kept taking deep breaths. I can't control this power at all. Lulin frowned slightly. It stands to reason that the power gem should not involve emotional problems. But I don't know what is going on now. Thinking about it, Lulin could only attribute it to the Infinity Stones and something he didn't know. After this experiment, it became clear that Tony also knew that he could not use the Infinity Stones for the time being. So he didn't have the slightest nostalgia, turned around and went on with his research. For Tony, the Infinity Stones are just the icing on the cake, not the snow, and this is what Lauren appreciates about Tony. Watching Tony leave, Lu Lin took out the power gem in his hand and looked at it carefully. This gemstone is quiet in his hands like a good baby, but as soon as it is out of his control, it will become uncontrollable. Lu Lin did not know what the reason for this situation was. Maybe the Infinity Stones themselves are not something that ordinary people can master. In the original book, all the Infinity Stones exist in a special form so that ordinary creatures can use them. For example, the space gem that was made into the cosmic cube, such as the mind gem that was made into the mind scepter, the most classic is the time gem that was made into the Eye of Agamotto. On the one hand, these Eastern tools allow ordinary creatures to use the power of these gems, but at the same time, they also limit the power of gems. These tools are actually protecting the user. Even if it is as powerful as Thanos, it needs to use the Infinity Gauntlet created by the dwarves himself to use the Infinity Stones. Only used it once, and Thanos was almost completely finished. Of course, there are also reasons for this and how he uses it. In reality, Lowen wouldn't believe Tony would be able to snap his fingers a few years later. After all, Tony is just an ordinary person who has not undergone any reinforcement from beginning to end. Let's see what happens to ordinary people who touch the Infinity Stones. Thor's girlfriend, for example, was almost completely wiped out by just one ether particle. Even later it caused countless complications. But what about Tony? Even with the Infinity Gauntlet, he touched 6 Infinity Stones at the same time. Think about what Thanos was like when he touched those gems, when he set them in his gloves. Let's see what state Tony is in the final stage. Lu Lin had a bold conjecture. Could it be, these gemstones also have their own consciousness? They will also do things like confession to the Lord in some way. Otherwise, Tony's snapping fingers couldn't explain it at all. After all, in theory, Tony, an ordinary person, should have disappeared the moment he touched 6 Infinity Stones at the same time. You don't really have this mind of your own, do you? Lu Lin squinted at the power gem in his hand, shaking it gently. As if in response to Lu Lin's words, a faint purple light flashed above the power gem. Good guy, did you really let me guess? Lu Lin weighed the power gem in his hand and chuckled. It seems that I underestimated you little guys. To be honest, I'd love to see what kind of reaction you can provoke. The power gem turned over in Lu Lin's palm and flashed twice. Lu Lin's face suddenly became very strange. Because he saw a hint of it in the power gem, grievance. Are you still aggrieved? Lu Lin suddenly cried and laughed. Why are you wronged? Why are you aggrieved? Lu Lin was a little puzzled. However, he was destined to not be able to get the answer he wanted from the power gem. After all, the power gem could not speak, let alone communicate. Lu Lin smiled and shook his head and put the gem away. He was really nervous to talk to a thoughtless stone. However, Lu Lin did not notice that when he put the stone in his pocket, the power gem turned over in his pocket, as if to express his dissatisfaction. As the embodiment of the rules in the universe, in fact, the Infinity Stones have their own consciousness. It's just that because their power is too strong, the process of generating wisdom is very slow. In the process, many Infinity Stones were also sealed by various people using various means in order to control or use them. The power gem sealed in the cosmic orb is the representative of being sealed and collected. The mind gem, which is sealed in the mind scepter, is the representative of being sealed for easy use. And this envelope is tens of millions of years, which greatly delays the process of self-awareness of the birth of gemstones. But the Infinity Stones seem to have had a wonderful chemical reaction on Lu Lin's body, causing the speed of their intelligence generation to increase greatly. Now the power gem can already react to things in the outside world to a certain extent. However, all this, Lu Lin did not find out. He was still on his way. Just when Star-Lord fell into entanglement and doubt, on Earth, TH was also in trouble. When Thor arrived at the place where the hammer was found, it had been taken over by S.H.I.E.L.D. and sealed up. Thor didn't care about this, ignored Jane's dissuasion, and rushed straight over. The result was naturally unsurprisingly, and now Thor had no power to fight back, and was directly subdued by a small stun gun. Unlike the original, when Thor revealed his identity as an Asgardian, he was immediately respected. After all, there was an example of Lulin there, and Fury didn't dare to be careless. So Thor smoothly came to Mjolnir and tried to pick up his own hammer. But he, like countless ordinary people, couldn't get the slightest response from Mjolnir. This made the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. begin to suspect Thor's identity. But because he knew Asgard too well, Fury began to wonder if this man was a liar. But now Lulin is not on Earth, and he can't be contacted at all, so he can't ask for verification. In the end, he can only let Thor go after some interrogation. Thor, who did not get the approval of Mjolnir, suddenly fell into loss and self-doubt. When he picked up Mjolnir for the first time in his life, he never doubted Mjolnir's loyalty. But now, Mjolnir no longer responds to his call, which makes Thor begin to wonder if he is no longer worthy of Mjolnir. When Jane found Thor, he was sitting dapped on the side of the road, not knowing what he was thinking. "How? You were kicked out by those people?" Jane looked at Thor and said with some worry, "I told you, those are government people, it's not easy to mess with, you see." Saying that, Jane glanced at the scars on Thor's forehead that had been bandaged, and said a little helplessly, "How did you do this? Did those people hurt you?" Jane was a little angry. "They have no right to do this. They let me go to meet my hammer," Thor said weakly. "But my hammer no longer responds to my calling." Thor hugged his head in pain. Why is this? Am I already not worthy of Mjolnir?" This, Jane and her female companion looked at each other, and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. At this time, she really didn't know how to comfort Thor. "A man as strong as you can't afford that hammer?" the woman asked curiously. Then she was a little excited. "Look, I'm right. Jane was a little helpless. "I said, believe in science." But then, she began to have some doubts. What the hell are these people doing? They wouldn't be a bunch of crooks, would they? Or are they conducting some illegal experiment? Jane, who had a strong sense of justice, felt obligated to figure out what was going on here. Therefore, she planned to wait until the evening, when there were few guards, and go in to see what this group of people were doing. Thor also didn't believe that he would be so abandoned by Mjolnir, so he also decided to go see Mjolnir again with Jane in the evening. And S.H.I.E.L.D's guards are very tight, and with their 2 rookies, they will definitely not be able to break through S.H.I.E.L.D. guards. Jane was just an ordinary person who had not received any formal training, and Thor had always been reckless and rushed directly into the killing ring. To expect these 2 people to do something in stealth is to dream big. But just such 2 rookie chickens actually came to Mjolnir smoothly. This happens for only one reason. That is, all this was actually arranged by someone. Just as Thor tried to pick up Mjolnir again, in the camp not far away, Fury was watching what was happening in front of him through the monitor. The result was naturally as everyone expected, and Mjolnir did not react at all. Jane and her friend naturally stepped forward to try it as well. Needless to say, they naturally can't afford Mjolnir. Seeing this scene, Thor fell to his knees in Mjolnir. His tears flowed. Why don't you respond to me anymore? Is it that I am no longer worthy of you?" At this moment, the wind was fierce, and lightning and thunder roared. Tordin laughed. Is it you? Thor was excited and went to get Mjolnir. However, the result has not changed, and he still cannot afford Mjolnir. He was even shot away by the electric light that was excited around Mjolnir. Seeing this scene, Jane knew that they could no longer stay here, and it would not be long before those people would come over, so they had to leave now. Dragging the reluctant Thor, the group of 3 finally left the place before S.H.I.E.L.D. agents found them. On the other side, Fury and Coulson looked at each other. No evidence is needed now, and that's the best evidence. Thor is not lying, he is really an Asgardian and a prince of Asgard, and even more so the owner of this strange hammer. But the question that needs to be considered now is how to handle and resolve their relationship. If, according to Lulin, they didn't need to meddle in this matter at all, but how could Fury be willing? In fact, long before Thor's arrival, Fury had arranged for countless people to test Mjolnir. Knowing the characteristics of Mjolnir was not a very surprising thing for Fury. A lot of this information was obtained from Lulin, and some was directly said by Thor without scruples during the interrogation of Thor. To be honest, when he heard the characteristics of Mjolnir, Fury's heart was fiercely moved. As long as you can afford this hammer, you can become Thor, and have the power of Thor. How can Fury not be moved? If a person who could lift Mjolnir appeared under his agents, wouldn't he have taken off directly? Will he still need to develop any weapons then? He didn't even need to think about who to invite to join his Avengers squad, they were ready-made. So, before Thor arrived, Fury had already asked everyone he thought might be approved by Mjolnir to try it out. The result was naturally without any surprises, and no one was able to get Mjolnir's approval. According to Lulina's official words, only truly upright people can be recognized by Mjolnir. It seems that his agents cannot meet the requirements of Mjolnir. So Fury mobilized retired soldiers who had served to give it a try. But hundreds of people tried before and after, and none of them met the requirements. Even Fury himself went to try it, and the result was naturally that Mjolnir did not move. It seems that something has happened a little bit. Fury glanced in the direction Thor had left, and without making a sound, he went to greet a heavyweight. That's right, this person is Steve Rogers. Captain, long time no see. Fury greeted with a smile. How's it going? It's okay, Steve said lightly. It's really been easier lately. Fury said that he would let the captain leave after this period of time, but in fact, Steve had never been able to get out of this political vortex. He's been helping Fury face all this mess of pressure from the outside. That's why he was strange that he could have a good face for Fury at this time. Fury didn't care either. It was clear that he knew what he was doing was not generous, but who made him a cheeky person. So he immediately took Steve to Mjolnir. Before coming, Steve had read all the information about Mjolnir, and naturally knew what he was here for. Therefore, he did not hesitate and walked directly up. Steve stood in front of the hammer, exhaled slightly, then held Mjolnir with both hands, and then began to exert force at the waist. Fury's face changed instantly, because everyone present could obviously see that when Steve was exerting force, the Mjolnir was obviously moved. But it was only for that moment, and no matter how hard Steve tried after that, he never made the Mjolnir move even a little. This made Fury's expectations instantly turn into nothingness. Moments later, Steve stood up and shrugged, indicating that there was nothing he could do. If you can't even hold it, then I don't know who else in this world can hold this hammer. Fury said half-jokingly. He actually knew in his heart that if even Steve could not get the approval of the so-called Mjolnir, then there was really no one in this world who could be recognized by Mjolnir. So he very simply gave up his plan to obtain Mjolnir. The risk is too great, the return is too low. If Loren or Thor finds out about this, it will be difficult to say about the relationship with Asgard in the future. It's good to be able to get it, but since it's already destined to be unavailable, then don't think about it. Being able to study Mjolnir in a limited amount of time, Fury was already satisfied. As for the latter things, he was already too lazy to bother. Just wait for them to deal with it themselves. While Thor is distressed that he will not be able to get a response from Mjolnir again, in the palace of Asgard, Loki finds Odin angrily. Why do they all have so-called trials and I have nothing? Loki felt something unfair in his heart. The father has always cared about the older brother and younger brother, and his middle child never seems to receive his father's attention and approval. Odin didn't even want to scold him. This was unacceptable to Loki. And when he learned that Thor went to Earth for the so-called trial, and Lulin had already begun the trial that belonged to him, Loki's mentality completely exploded. Why do they all have it and I don't? People do not suffer from poverty but inequality, if everyone does not have it or everyone has it. But everyone else has it, except for him, who has considered himself unfavored since he was a child, which makes him feel very unfair. Finally, Loki couldn't bear it anymore and found Odin to confront him. Did you never think of me as your child? Loki said resentfully. You misunderstood, this is not a trial. Odin explained lightly. What could he say? Was he going to say directly that these were all deceitful Thor? What if Loki knew this and told Thor? Is this the end of the trial that has finally begun? After all, Thor has had a good relationship with Loki since he was a child, and it is difficult for Odin to guarantee that Loki will not sue him. What if all efforts fall short because of Loki's complaint? So Odin wasn't going to tell Loki about it. If you want, I can also prepare you for the trial you want. If I want, Loki suddenly laughed. What do you call if I want to? Didn't you say that whoever passes the trial will succeed in inheriting the throne of Asgard? As I said, this is not a trial, Odin said with a frown. It's not a trial, so what? Loki said resentfully. Did you not intend to give me the opportunity to inherit the throne in the first place? You're not even willing to give me a chance to do a trial. Does Loki really care about this throne? The answer, naturally, is no. To put it bluntly, until now, even many years later, Loki was just a child who craved attention. But don't just think that Loki is really some kind of harmless silly white sweet. If you really think so, then the hundreds of thousands of people killed by the Chitauri people attracted by Loki in the original book have something to say. In a way, Loki has a touch of cruelty and a touch of indifference in his nature. Just look at what he did later. No matter what kind of past he has, if he does such an unforgivable thing, it is impossible to escape death. But his crimes were all covered up by his later tragic death. Think carefully about what Loki brought to Earth. In the original work, after the Battle of New York, the lives of countless people have been greatly changed and affected. Just dealing with the various remnants left by the Chitauri people can be a TV series. Lu Lin even remembers that when he first watched Marvel TV series, there was a scene where a strange epidemic was circulating in a certain area. People who suffer from this disease will eventually erupt from the inside out, and the whole person will die directly, without any room for redemption. As long as you get sick, you die. Many firefighters lost their lives. Under Coulson's investigation, it was eventually discovered that it was actually an alien virus, and the source was the helmet that was ripped off the alien corpse after the Battle of New York. And this alien virus is just a bad cold for aliens. This is just a microcosm of the impact the Chitauri have had on the planet. Not to mention those humans who have already died tragically. So Lulin's perception of Loki has never been very good, and his relationship with Loki is relatively average. Loki doesn't care about Asgard's throne, all he cares about is whether he can get Odin's approval. This longing deepens in constant self-doubt, and after Loki discovers his true identity, it completely turns into hatred for Odin. It's just that after going through a series of things, Loki finally repented. But even if he repents, it won't make up for the damage he has done to the world. So you didn't intend to consider me in the first place, did you? Loki looked at Odin, his heart full of puzzlement and resentment. I see. Without waiting for Odin to explain, Loki turned and left, leaving no room for Odin to defend at all. In this regard, Odin could only sigh. It is true that he never considered Loki among the options for succession. After all, even if Loki was raised by an Asgardian, he is not an Asgardian at all. How ironic it is to make someone who is not Asgard king of Asgard. In a way, Loki is right, he actually realized the problem early on, but he didn't know where the root of the problem was. Therefore, when he learned his identity, he would be so lost and sad that he was directly blackened. But now Loki doesn't know this, he just wants to prove himself now. However, the current Loki can only be regarded as a child who has not grown up, and his way to prove himself is to prove that he is no worse than Thor by defeating Thor. Of course, simply competing in strength, Loki is naturally not as good as Thor, and he still has self-awareness. But if he can't beat it, he will use his brain. The naive Loki thinks that as long as he can defeat Thor, he will be recognized by his father. But what Loki doesn't know is that Odin has always recognized him. It is precisely because of recognition that Odin has never been willing to deceive Loki. He can deceive Loki and tell him that you also have the right to inherit and that you can become king of Asgard if you can overcome your brother. As for whether Loki can beat Thor, Odin is a referee, and if he can't even control this kind of thing, he will be the king of Asgard for so many years. But Odin didn't want to do that, so he never gave Loki the slightest chance. If he didn't really recognize Loki's abilities, recognize Loki's means, how could he do this? So Loki's abacus is doomed to fail. When he arrives in Midgard, Loki is pleasantly surprised to find that Thor has lost the approval of Mjolnir. It made him ecstatic. This is a godsend. So the first thing he did was to go to Mjolnir and try to get Mjolnir's approval. After all, Loki specializes in magic, and his understanding of magic is naturally not comparable to Thor's magical idiot. But after research, he was disappointed to find that even if Thor lost Mjolnir's approval, he was not willing to choose himself. But the loss didn't last long. Now that no one is recognized by the hammer, Loki's heart is much more balanced. But looking at the frustrated Thor, a bold idea arose in Loki's heart. We're almost there. Yondu glanced out the window of the spaceship. Prepare for our death. Why are you so pessimistic? Rocket Raccoon is not nervous at all. Maybe someone will come to our rescue later. Save us. Yondu scoffed. Who do you think will come to our rescue? A notorious intergalactic pirate. Yondu pointed to himself. Or are you a little squirrel from the laboratory that no one cares about? Yondu laughed and said, prepare for your own death. No, we're not alone. The Rocket Raccoon glanced out the window, and then smiled slightly. Look, isn't the rescue coming? The next second, Lulin appeared in the room. What's going on with you guys? How did you make yourself like this? Roar, you're finally here, I thought you forgot about us. The Rocket Raccoon jumped up happily. I'm Groot. Wait, you are. Yondu looked at Lulin in shock. How did you get in? How did you end up here? It's simple, it's just magic. Lulin said lightly. As soon as I received your message, I rushed here. Let's talk about what is your situation. Rocket Raccoon added fuel and vinegar to tell what happened. Why do you seem so calm? Rocket Raccoon was puzzled. Why do you seem to know everything? Yes, I know. Lulin nodded slightly. Tenjin Group, how can I, as an Asgardian, not know his news? I even know what he wants those kids for. What for? Yondu struggled to sit up from the ground. When it comes to matters related to Star-Lord, how can he calm down? You know, it's the boring ideal of ruling the universe. Lulin pouted and said, it's just a madman. Then why did he kill so many of his own children? You know, this guy is the Tenjin Group. Lulin said disdainfully. Perhaps a powerful force eroded his head, and after a long journey, he gradually felt that all the creatures in the universe were not worthy of being compared with him. Yondu felt that his three views had been refreshed. Since you feel that these creatures do not cooperate with themselves, why are there so many children? Lulin seemed to see the doubts of courage, and then explained, so many children are because he wants to create an existence of the same level as himself. As a result, you naturally know that those children did not meet his standards and requirements, no matter what race of children, so he disposed of those children. For courage, children who do not meet his standards and requirements are defective. Those women who have a love of fish and water with him can kill without mercy, and these defective products are nothing to him. The children who were executed by him at will are the best portrayal of his attitude. It turns out that, is that so? Brave's eyes were a little lost. In a way, you were doing something good in the first place. Lulin glanced at Yondu and said lightly. Because he really wanted to get his children back. Of course, the premise was that he wanted children. How did you get in? A pirate walked in. Lulin glanced at the man, and a red laser shot out of his eye, instantly burning a large hole in the pirate's head. That's right, this is the superhuman thermal vision he just learned. However, his proficiency in this move was not enough, and after the laser shot through the pirate's head, it shot through several metal walls in succession. Wow, Rocket Raccoon blew a long whistle. Where did you learn this trick? It's so cool. Wait, the Rocket Raccoon seemed to have thought of something, and then looked at Lulin in shock. You won't have received any transformation, right? What are you thinking? Lulin glanced at the Rocket Raccoon, then rubbed his eyes. The first time he used this move, he felt that his eyes were a little dry and he was not very comfortable with it. Recently acquired abilities, just test it. How did you learn this trick? Rocket Raccoon's eyes lit up. Can I learn it too? First of all, you have to be an Asgardian. Lulin smiled lightly. It's better to be royal blood. Then, Lulin added in his heart. Secondly, you have to have a plug-in. Rocket Raccoon's gaze suddenly dimmed. Okay. It looks like they've spotted us. Lulin moved his shoulders. Do you need me to keep alive? Yondu stood up and thought for a while. Let's stay a few people, we can't drive this spaceship. Then just wait here. In the next second, the two lost track of Lulin. Need help? Rocket Raccoon glanced at the courage to struggle to get up. Yondu nodded. I have a spare controller in my cabin, you can help me bring it and replace it for me. Rocket Raccoon nodded and ran out. When the Rocket Raccoon returned with the controller, Lulin also happened to appear in front of the two again. With a brand new controller, Courage is finally alive again. Since this controller is connected to the cranial nerve, this also causes a considerable part of the nerves in Yondu's brain to be entangled with the controller. Losing or damaging his controller doesn't just mean he can no longer control his whistle. Of course, a damaged controller or a short-term replacement of the controller will not affect him too much. But if there is no controller for a long time, his body will receive irreversible damage, which is why he has been listless. Now with the controller, his confidence is back. Seeing Lu Lin come back, he smiled faintly. Have you encountered any trouble? Yondu whistled lightly, and the next second, his whistle arrow flew into his hand. Leave it to me. Lu Lin glanced at Yondu strangely. I've tied everyone up, just go and see which ones need to be kept. What do you say? All tied up? Yondu looked at Lu Lin stunned. You're still too young to know the gold content of the Prince of Asgard. Rocket Raccoon passed by Yondu and patted Yondu's calf. He was only able to get this place. Do you understand what is called the gold content of Prince Asgard? Rocket Raccoon leaned back tactically, and a disdainful smile appeared on his furry face. No matter how much Yondu didn't want to believe it, he had to believe it when he saw the crew neatly placed in the spaceship hull. How did it? Yondu opened his mouth wide. Lu Lin smiled softly and did not speak. But immediately, a ray of hope erupted in Yondu's eyes. I heard this little squirrel say, you have a good relationship with Star-Lord. Lu Lin saw through Yondu's thoughts at a glance. Don't worry about Peter's safety, he has his own path to follow. Lu Lin said lightly, if he can't solve it, I will naturally make a move. Originally, this time to the planet where Igo's body is, Yondu was already determined to die. But now, after seeing Lu Lin's strength, a wave of hope suddenly rose in his heart. You know Igo. But Yondu was still a little worried. After all, Igo is the legendary celestial god group. His essence is that planet, and just thinking about it tells what a desperate size it is. With a creature of this size, will its strength be poor? The Void Land was transformed from the head of a group of celestial gods, and you can think about how powerful this creature will be when it is alive. Even though Lu Lin's strength had far exceeded his imagination, Courage was still a little worried. There is no need to question my strength. Lu Lin smiled lightly. To be honest, there is a heavenly god group, I haven't put it in my eyes. Not to mention just Igo. Seeing that Yondu was still a little worried, Lu Lin did not defend too much. It is normal for people to always be reluctant to believe things that are beyond their own knowledge. When the facts are in front of him, Yondu will naturally believe what he sees. Looking at the planet getting closer and closer, Iago couldn't help but remember what happened before. Not long ago, he approached the Marauders and tried to convince them to let him join again. But the sincere invitation was exchanged for merciless ridicule. We will always be ashamed of you. Marauders will never strike at children, you violated our principles. You are our disgrace. You don't expect to hear the trumpet of freedom after death. The glorious color of Ogle will never shine on your tombstone. Yondu tried to explain something, but in the end he didn't say anything. How should he explain this kind of thing to his former good brother? Even after being expelled from the Marauder Legion, he never gave up his glory and never violated the principles of the Marauders. But who would believe that? Who would believe a shameless guy who would prey on children? The answer is obvious, no one would believe such a guy at all. Everyone thought that he kept Star-Lord because Star-Lord was relatively young and could steal things from some places where ordinary people couldn't enter. This is all the more proof of his shamelessness and meanness. Looking at the departing backs of his companions, Courage was very painful. But he quickly recovered, and it was not the first time this had happened in so many years, he had long been used to it. When his thoughts came back, Yondu saw Igo's body, and his body couldn't help but tremble slightly. He had seen the strength of a man with his own eyes, and how could he not be afraid when he came to this man this time? But for the sake of Star-Lord, he still decided to go resolutely. As soon as the spacecraft landed, Tony came looking for it again. I feel as if I've found a way to use the power gem safely. Tony rubbed his hands and said excitedly. Let me try again. Lu Lin glanced at Tony. It had only been long since he left, and he was not quite convinced that Tony had found a way to control the power gem. But looking at Tony's expectant eyes, Lu Lin couldn't bear to hit him, so he took out the power gem again. This time, Tony carefully set the power gem in front of the reactor on his chest, followed by the purple light. Tony seemed to have been prepared, and the armor on his body began to breathe as if it were alive. And with the rhythm of the armor, the power gem seemed to be greatly hindered, and could only honestly stay in front of Tony's chest. "It's done," Tony said excitedly. However, how can the power gem be so good to match? In the next second, there was an even more violent purple light, and the power gem swam to Tony's forehead again. A powerful force rushed through Tony's body, making him can't help but let out a long roar. Sure enough, Lu Lin sighed slightly. As he had imagined, Tony still couldn't control the power gem, and he was too arrogant. After all, the power gem is one of the infinite rough stones, representing the most primordial power of the universe. If he was so easy to master, so many people throughout the ages, there would be no need to make a cosmic spirit ball to contain it. At this moment, purple lines have gradually spread to Tony's face. Under the rage, Tony actually attacked Lu Lin again. In just an instant, countless purple energies quickly hit Lu Lin's body. However, under the protection of Lu Lin's magic, the corners of his clothes were not damaged. In the next second, Lu Lin directly withheld the power gem from his head. Sober, 2 runes from ancient times spat out of Lu Lin's mouth and instantly hit Tony's soul. This time, Tony woke up much faster than before. 2 times in succession, Tony's soul has suffered some damage. If Lu Lin didn't help Tony relieve the pressure that the power gem put on him, I am afraid that Tony would soon become a fool. This feeling, too bad. Tony kept taking deep breaths. I can't control this power at all. You're in too much of a hurry. Lu Lin shook his head helplessly. You think too simple about the power gem. Lu Lin hesitated. In this way, the power gem is placed in your place and given to you to study for a while, but you must pay attention to not be so rash again. If you get eroded again, you're going to be an idiot right away. Even I won't be able to save you then. With that, Lu Lin handed the power gem to Tony. When Tony heard this, he hesitated, and then decided to contain the power gem. He tries to use his armor to contain the power gem, but finds that no matter how he gets it, it will quickly erode. Helplessly, he could only watch Lu Lin put away the power gem again. But he was not without gains. At least studying these eroded places would allow him to deepen his research on the power gem. Lu Lin suddenly thought of something and took out a delicate ball from his pocket. He put the power gem inside and handed it to Tony. That's right, this is the cosmic orb. At the beginning of that planet, everyone did not notice this cosmic spirit orb, only Star-Lord noticed. So Star-Lord picked it up and brought it back. His original intention was to use this cosmic spirit ball pit to deceive others, but after Shandar Star released the news, this plan could only be helpless. The cosmic spirit ball was useless, and he threw it to Lu Lin. Now it can be used to release power gems. You can study this cosmic spirit orb, maybe it will help you. From the first sight of the cosmic spirit ball, Tony couldn't take his eyes off. He was curious about what kind of material could make the power gem honestly stay in it and not move. However, just when Lu Lin handed the cosmic spirit ball containing the power gem to Tony, Lu Lin keenly noticed that the power gem inside was a little restless. The cosmic spirit ball that was about to be delivered to Tony's hands turned a corner and was taken back by Lu Lin. Tony, what do you mean? Wait a minute. Lu Lin opened the cosmic spirit ball and saw the power gem lying honestly inside, his brows wrinkled slightly. You guy, a little dishonest, huh? You don't really have any ideas, do you? The cosmic spirit ball lay honestly inside the box, not moving. Lu Lin glanced at the power gem suspiciously, then put it away and handed it to Tony again. This time, he did not feel any energy fluctuations from inside. No matter how much he didn't want to believe it, he now had to admit that the power gem was indeed self-conscious. What are you talking about? Tony gave Lu Lin a strange look. This is just a stone. You're talking to a rock, are you sure? What's wrong with the stone? Couldn't a stone be a creature? Lu Lin laughed. This is in the United States, you are going to be prosecuted by those human rights people. At the mention of this, Tony looked a little depressed. He also doesn't know why the human rights activists are targeting him. The group went so far as to say that there were no black people in his company, so he was involved in racial discrimination. Tony, of course, is not used to this gang, and he said bluntly, because no black person can meet the entry standards of our company. This is a hornet's nest. Tony was directly taken to court by many people, saying that he was suspected of discriminating against black people. The reason was that Tony was suspected of making remarks about black mental retardation. When he heard this reason, Tony's whole body was about to die of laughter. Why are they reluctant to recruit black people? Don't these people all give reasons? But in the United States, racial discrimination is a taboo subject, and whoever is involved in it has a huge price. Even Tony is no exception. Although he eventually won the case, he also had to open a quota of company employees specifically for blacks as compensation. Now when it comes to the black people in the company, Tony is as disgusting as if he had eaten a fly. And after Lu Lin learned about this, he would take it out from time to ridicule him. Tony was helpless about it. Besides, after coming to the universe for so long, do you still think that there is something impossible? Lu Lin glanced at Groot not far away and said lightly. Looking in the direction of Lu Lin's line of sight, Tony saw Groot and immediately understood. A tree can become a living being, so it seems that a stone has its own consciousness now that it is not so difficult to accept. After all, the power of this stone can be described as infinite, and he is himself a concrete embodiment of the 6 basic elements that make up the universe. Then this gem, upon learning that the power gem most likely had its own consciousness, Tony began to hesitate. If this is just a stone without consciousness, he can naturally study it boldly. But now knowing that he might have his own consciousness, Tony hesitated. Of course, he was not afraid, but felt that he needed to make some complete preparations before he could officially start researching. After what happened before, Tony now can be said to cherish his life very much. Besides, the feeling of being controlled by the power gem is really not very pleasant. It's okay, there is me, what are you afraid of? Lu Lin closed the cosmic ball and casually threw it back to Tony. Even if you die and the ashes are lifted, I can save you. Lu Lin said confidently. Hearing Lu Lin say this, although Tony still had some doubts in his heart, he still took the cosmic spirit ball. He still believed in Lu Lin very much, and since Lu Lin said that it was okay, it would definitely be okay. That is, Star-Lord. The Rocket Raccoon looked at the man flying not far away and opened his mouth. How is it done? Besides, he is also a child of the celestial god group, wouldn't it be common for him to be able to do this? Lu Lin said lightly. Seeing several people together, Xingju's face became very ugly. Just now, he thought about it alone, and felt that what he said to Gamora's words was indeed a little too much. So Star-Lord decided to go to Gamora, and apologize again by the way. But after flying around the planet, he didn't find where Gamora's was, but met the gang. If it was just other people, Xingju wouldn't feel anything, but Yondu was also in this gang, which made him very incomprehensible. Xingju's biggest wish in the first half of his life was to escape from Yondu, and now he has finally fulfilled this wish and found his own father. But Xingju did not expect that at this time, Yondu actually came to the door again. Why are you here? Xingju asked with an ugly face. How did you find me? Come with me, this is not your home. Yondu said sincerely. This is not my home. Xingju immediately laughed angrily. Then where is my home? Is it your spaceship? How can you talk to me like that? Courage, who was originally in a peaceful mood, suddenly began to get angry. Don't you know that I saved your life in the first place? Saved my life? Star-Lord sneered. You just pulled me out of that monster's mouth in the first place. Do you want to talk about this for the rest of your life? In fact, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been taken to the universe at all, and I wouldn't have fallen into the mouth of that monster. You are not qualified to say that you saved my life. Yondu opened his mouth, he had no idea how to retort. Star-Lord is right, but it's not right either. Without bravery, Star-Lord would not have been able to be brought to the universe, but again. If there is no bravery, there will be others to help Igo find his child, and then Star-Lord will end up the same. You're wrong, Lu Lin said lightly. Until now, there is nothing to hide. If you didn't have courage, you would have died early. What do you mean by that? Xingju looked at Lu Lin with an unkind face. You don't know my past, how can you say such things? I don't know your past, but the person who knows your past is coming, you might as well ask that person yourself. Lu Lin glanced at Igo floating not far away and said lightly. Star-Lord turned around and saw Iago coming over, and the expression on his face softened a little. I don't need you to say it, I can explain it myself. Igo landed on the ground and said lightly. I commissioned Yondu to bring you from Earth to me. Igo said lightly. Because I have long known that you are the one who can truly inherit my mantle. What does that mean? Star-Lord was a little confused, he didn't know what Iago meant by this. It turns out that he was taken from the Earth in the first place, and was entrusted by his own father. Thinking of this, Xingju's eyes when he looked at Yondu suddenly became a little unkind. If it weren't for this guy, he would have already begun to enjoy his father's love. This guy actually dares to say that he is his lifesaver. Thinking of this, Xingju suddenly became furious. What? Why? Is what he said true? Star-Lord looked at Yondu sadly. Although he has always wanted to escape from Yondu, in Xingju's heart, his feelings for Yondu cannot be explained clearly in 2 words. Yondu has taken care of him for so many years, even if he has never liked Yondu very much, but the relationship for so many years is not fake at all. But now, he suddenly found that his feelings for so many years seemed to have become a joke. What father loves what family affection? It turns out that his life has been a tragedy from the beginning. He's right, but there's a reason for that. Yondu explained. Reason? What's with? Star-Lord looked at Yondu angrily. Is it because you are a vile and shameless betrayer? That's why you're there. Enough. I don't want to listen to you anymore. Xingju turned around and said coldly. Let's go now, we will be considered a knife. From now on, we will not have any relationship again. Iago stepped forward and gently stopped Star-Lord's shoulder. Yondu looked at the scene in front of him, and his heart hurt, he was a little unable to breathe. It seems that Iago has found the child he wants. In this case, then Star-Lord will be very happy to stay here. At least he won't be in danger. It was also true that Igo was a group of celestial gods after all, and following him would definitely be more promising than following someone like himself who had been expelled from the Marauder Legion. Yondu didn't say a word, and turned around sadly. Lu Lin rolled his eyes. What I hate the most is people like you who don't speak clearly. Lu Lin complained. Obviously a few words can make it clear, you have to make so many moves. Pull and pull out, and finally it takes half a day on the water to solve the matter. In that case, wouldn't it be okay to make things clear at the beginning? However, at this time, Star-Lord did not want to listen to Lu Lin at all. I'm my friend, but it's my family affair, so you better not meddle, okay? Star-Lord's tone was very tired. Tony also stepped forward and grabbed Lu Lin and shook his head slightly. This is their family affair, we outsiders don't interfere. Lu Lin chuckled and snapped his fingers. Star-Lord then found himself frozen in place, unable to move. What do you mean by that? Xingju suppressed the anger in his heart. What do I mean by that? Lu Lin said lightly. You can leave if you want, listen to me finish talking, and then wherever you want, whatever you want. This is our family affair, please don't interfere with outsiders. Iago stepped forward and looked at Lu Lin with cold eyes. Although he didn't know what Lu Lin was going to say, he could feel it, if Lu Lin was asked to say it. I am afraid that his plan will fall short. Why, you want to compare with me? Lu Lin raised his eyebrows. You seem to be very confident. Glancing at Lu Lin, Iago chose to back down. His plan was not yet fully prepared, so he was reluctant to make a fuss at this time. Seeing that the plan was about to be completely completed, if at this time, because of the battle with Lu Lin, his plan had to be postponed for another 100 years, it would be called a blood loss. Although he didn't know what Lu Lin wanted to say, Iago felt that with his eloquence, he would be able to convince Star-Lord with a high probability. Thinking about it, Iago decided to see what Lu Lin wanted to say. Aren't you curious where all those brothers and sisters before you went? Lu Lin looked at Xingju and said lightly. You always thought that Yondu kept you just to let you steal somewhere they couldn't go. But you've also been wandering in the interstellar for so many years, have you ever seen a few scenes where children need to go out? Courage is not alone, he still has a group of intergalactic pirates waiting to be fed. A group of pirates, even if they have their own ethics and their own rules, they are still a group of murderous pirates in the final analysis. They have to think about their own survival. In space travel, resources are precious, and no one wants to keep a useless waste on a ship. Even if Yondu is the captain, he has to take into account the thoughts and feelings of his subordinates. If you can't convince the public, you will usher in a rebellion. This kind of rebellion had already been experienced once before. Therefore, if he wants to keep Star-Lord, he must give a reason that can convince the crew, and he must let the crew know that Star-Lord is useful. That's why Yondu arranged the task of stealing things for Star-Lord. But in fact, if it weren't for Star-Lord, those tasks, Courage would have more and better ways to complete them easily. Anyway, his subordinates are just a bunch of brainless fools, and they can't tell what is going on. They could only see that Star-Lord had successfully completed the task, and they reluctantly agreed to let Star-Lord stay. Even so, Yondu's attitude towards Star-Lord made many people dissatisfied, which eventually led to the rebellion on Yondu's ship. Why don't you ask your biological father where all those siblings before you have gone? Lu Lin said lightly. Maybe the bones in the underground of the room where you live can give you the answer. What? Star-Lord looked at Iago with a shocked expression. He always thought that Igo only had one child of his own, but he didn't expect that Igo actually had so many children. Until now, Iago is not going to hide it. Since he wanted to win the trust of Star-Lord, he must make him feel his sincerity. If these people were not present, Iago could have used other lies to fool the past, but now he can be sure that as long as he lies, they will definitely debunk themselves very decisively. So it's better to tell the truth. I told you, I'm the Tenjin group. Iago said lightly. My life has been too long to be counted in numbers. It took me millions of years just to learn to control my body, and don't you think it's normal for me to have some children over the years? It's a pity that none of them inherited my talent, so they all died. But you, my child, you are different. Igo looked at Shingju kindly. You inherited my talent, my strength, we are truly the same kind of people. You will live as long as I do, thousands of years, millions of years. We will exist until the end of the universe. Iago said gently. I am also willing to share my power with you to ensure that we will not encounter any danger. You and I are the same kind, and they are different. Igo's words are very tempting. No matter who is in this position, I am afraid it is difficult not to be moved. Star-Lord is naturally no exception. However, in the next second, Lu Lin exposed his lie. Selective concealment of the truth often gives people the wrong answer. Lu Lin said lightly. For thousands of years, the death of children who did not inherit his talent is indeed a normal thing. But he didn't tell you how these children died and at what age. Without waiting for Iago to refute, Lu Lin said. Those children all died in their teens, and this point of death often happened within 1 to 2 years of they being brought to this planet. Lu Lin didn't even have to tell Star-Lord who killed these children, he just had to put the test in front of him, and Star-Lord would naturally be able to guess the correct answer. The conclusion he came up with was obviously more convincing than what others told him. Is what he said true? Iago now regretted letting Lu Lin speak. But now that the words have been spoken, since the matter is irreparable, then find a way to make up for it. That's right, Iago said without changing his face. I have already said that we are different from those people, they did not inherit my talent, so what is the difference with those ordinary people? In my eyes, these people are like the lowest creatures, there is no difference. Iago looked directly into Star-Lord's eyes, trying to use his spiritual power to influence and change Star-Lord's 3 views. Do you feel sad about creatures other than your own race? Do you feel sad about animals that are eaten by yourself every day? That's right, in my eyes, these creatures that have not inherited my talent are not fundamentally different from other creatures. You need to know, Peter, only you and me, we are the same people. It is not those boring low-level creatures that can accompany you, you can invest in their feelings, but you must not sink. Because you're not the same as them. Iago kept repeating these 4 different words, trying to influence Star-Lord's mind. But Lu Lin still didn't give up. Think about who in the universe will help him bring the child back. Those stupid pirates who have no brains must be unreliable, because the child is likely to be eaten on the way to be sent. So what he needs to find must be the kind of principled pirate. Lu Lin said lightly. For example, courage. Because only this kind of person can keep children safe. Lu Lin said slowly. Iago's choice was not wrong, and it was the right thing to do. But one problem that can easily arise is that these principled pirates may not take the children away from their mothers. So this led to Iago's recycling program running into a lot of obstacles, almost coming to a standstill. Fortunately, Iago's lifespan is long, and he can make up for his mistakes. So after understanding this matter, he will kill the child's mother before leaving. The reason why he didn't take the child away directly was because he didn't have the effort to raise a child for many years until he became an adult. However, this in turn leads to the fact that the child is likely to disappear without the care of the mother, or even grow up safely. So Iago's methods evolved again, and he used his abilities to plant lesions in the child's mother. This lesion will take the mother's life when the children grow up, and when the time comes, there will be no problem for the pirates to bring those children with them. Because they are the only relatives of these children in the world, these pirates have no reason to refuse a child to see their biological father. Even if Iago's children are a little much. So, how do you think your mother died? Lu Lin looked at Xingju and said lightly. Could it be because of some cancer? Xingju's state at this time was already a little wrong. You killed my mother. There was already something wrong with Star-Lord's eyes when he looked at Iago. You have to understand my painstaking efforts. Iago apparently didn't realize the seriousness of the matter. These are essential sacrifices in order to find my kind, in order to find you as quickly as possible. Don't I have even the slightest affection for those people? Iago was a little emotional, his silver-white hair swaying gently, and his face was full of anger and pain. Child, do you know that among so many people, my favorite is your mother, and when I did this, my heart was also painful. But you have to understand that I did all this for you. Iago put his hands on Xingju's shoulders and said seriously, I did all this to meet you as soon as possible. Fortunately, these efforts and sacrifices of mine were not in vain, and finally let me find you. Iago's voice was very soft. Trust me, okay. Trust me, I'm someone in this world who will never lie to you. Whitewashing their evil deeds with beautiful lies is the most common method used by such people. Shut up, Iago roared, and he finally couldn't help it. At this time, the silver blue light on his body flickered, and his eyes were already silver white, and there were light blue thunder wrapped around his body. Do you really want to go to war with me? Asgardians. What you will endure is the wrath of the members of the Celestial God group. Lu Lin's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you threatening me? Threatening Asgard's next king? To tell you the truth, if Iago is determined to go against Asgard, Lulin really finds it a bit tricky. Iago is alone. As long as it can't be completely solved, Iago alone can endlessly harass Asgard with his super mobility. He doesn't need to do much damage to Asgard, just come and harass the border from time to time, kill some civilians and then get out. It was easy for him, but such an act could do great damage to Asgard's reputation. If Asgard can't solve this problem, I'm afraid Asgard's deterrent power in the universe will plummet. At that time, there will be more troublesome things, and even the 9 realms under Asgard's control may rebel. Iago obviously also knew that as soon as this kind of words came out, it was obviously an unending situation. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.